Is God only willing to forgive me if I am willing to forgive other people? Welcome back to Small Talk Theology, and we're continuing to look at the Lord's Prayer. Now, in the Lord's Prayer, in Matthew chapter 6, Jesus says, "Forgive us our debts," or some translations say our trespasses, as we forgive our debtors, or those who trespass against us. Now, Jesus will expand on this a few verses later. He'll say, "So if you do not forgive others their debts, neither will your Father in heaven forgive you your debts." And so we have to ask, does this mean that I earn my forgiveness in some way by forgiving others? Well, that's not exactly how it works. And we see this illustrated later in the gospel. In Matthew 18, Jesus tells a parable of an unforgiving servant. And he says that a master had two servants. One servant owed the master an enormous amount of money, which would be millions and millions of dollars by today's standards, an insurmountable amount of money. And the master says, "Look, you owe me this large debt. In order to have some of it repaid, I'm going to sell you and your family into slavery." And of course, the servant falls on his face before the master, and he says, "Oh, please give me more time, please." And it says that the master had compassion on the servant, and so he forgave the debt. Well, then when this servant goes away, he sees one of the other servants of the master, and he says, "Wait," he says, "you owe me money." Now, this amount would have been closer to what we might think of as like $15,000, $10,000 or $15,000 by today's standards. And he says, "Pay me what you owe me." And he begins to beat the other servant and throw him into prison. And so when the master finds out about this, because remember, the master owns both servants, right? And then he says, "You know what? I'm going to relinquish my forgiveness, and I'm going to throw that first servant in jail because he did not forgive his brother from his heart." And so here's the reality. It's not that this man earned forgiveness by forgiving others. It showed that he wanted to receive forgiveness, but there was no change in his heart. He was not grateful for the forgiveness that he had received. And so one of the indicators that we have as Christians as to whether we have truly been forgiven of our sins is whether we are willing to forgive others of their sins against us. Now, I want to be clear here. This does not mean we have to let a cycle of abuse continue, but it does mean that we're willing to say, "You know what? I'm canceling the debt. I am not going to be angry against you anymore. I'm going to pray for you, and I'm going to grant you forgiveness." And so this is a sign that we also have been forgiven. God bless you guys. Live for Jesus.